Exclusive.
How is citizenship going to work?
Citizenship is basically, in the Star Citizen world, you sort of have to earn your citizenship. So the way you would earn citizenship is by performing military duty, which if you play Squadron 42 and complete, you can get citizenship. Or you can be a merchant and you make enough money and get enough prestige where you can sort of buy your way to be a citizen. Citizenship sort of conveys a certain level of benefits inside the Star Citizen universe in the United Empire of Earth space. But in other areas, it may not confer the same benefits. You may not want to be a citizen in the sort of lawless areas. People may gun for you. So I think it's going to depend on the player styles, but basically citizens will get some privileges in UEE control space or get more protection, for instance, than someone that isn't a citizen. But, and they may have different landing tariffs or whatever. But like I said, in UEE space, there will be a benefit. Outside of UEA space, it may be a negative.
In terms of insurance, how will it work in Star Citizen? What's the cost, and will it be available everywhere, or is there going to be certain areas where players will have to risk it, maybe like a pirate sector? Or
So in terms of insurance, there'll be a whole insurance everywhere, just because it would suck if you lost your full ship. But there's several levels, because that your hull is doesn't include all your weapons that you've added and bought to your ship and your cargo, and so you can also get insurance packages for your weapons, equipment, and also for your cargo. But those insurance packages don't necessarily transfer everywhere. So like there's some areas that are rated, I can't remember, we have a system for it, but like, red, or for instance, and you can't, if you go to that area, your insurance policy doesn't apply, basically. It's like you drive your car in Somalia, the insurance company's not gonna reimburse you when you get ripped off by some warlords. So it's going to be a little like the real world, but if you trade inside sort of a safe area, like in UE space in the trade lanes, you generally should be safe. Your insurance would probably apply to everything. In general, it shouldn't be a exorbitant cost. I mean, the insurance should be, if you're mostly doing safe things, the insurance should be like car insurance, right? So you pay it, but it's not like half your paycheck or anything. It's just a very small amount. Now, if you're engaging in like activity where you're blowing up a ship every 2 seconds and all the rest, then maybe your premium's slightly higher. But on the whole basis, we don't really want to make that too much of a penalty. The penalty would more come in your equipment and your cargo.
Cool. Situational question for you. Say your ship is about to go kerplunk, and you make a decision, you eject into space. If this is the case, when ejected into space, what happens then?
Okay, well, you eject into space. And then you float there. Hopefully no one shoots you while you're floating in space, because if you do, then you die a sort of, I wouldn't say it's a permadeath, but you sort of lose one of your lives, basically. But normally what would happen is if you don't get shot while you're floating in space, after a little bit of time, you'll get picked up by a rescue vehicle, and you'll cut to the closest, safest planet, and you're there in the bar, and if you have a ship that is a pretty easy one to replace, you'll have a new replacement ship sitting on the landing pad from your insurance company. But if you have a very rare ship, then it may take a bit of time to have that particular ship respawn, so to speak, because essentially the whole universe, like the creation of ships and weapons and everything, is inside the economy of the universe. So we don't just magically make ships, it's all to do with supply and demand. So like, for instance, a Corvette, not many of them come off the shipyard lines, whereas say an Aurora, which is common, there's lots of them everywhere.
If you're using a joystick, can you replace elements in your HUD to match what you're using to control the ship? For example, maybe using the Oculus Rift with a joystick?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, so like we're sort of really focusing on having a wide range of inputs. So whether it's joystick, keyboard, mouse, Oculus Rift, Track IR. So it's kind of like, Oculus Rift works pretty naturally with a joystick, I think would be probably the best setup for that. And that would feel very immersive. I'd say, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way we're setting it up. So.
Awesome. We know that Star Citizen graphics are going to be intensive, which is a good thing. For the average gamer, what type of rig or graphics card will they need to ensure that Star Citizen will run smooth? I'm sure you've been asked this a million times.
Yes, I have been asked it. It's kind of hard because we're building a game for essentially 2 years from now. So we're sort of thinking, okay, in 2015, what's going to be sort of your normal card? So the way we look at it is we think the equipment in 2015, the sort of mid-range, will be the equivalent of the top-end equipment today. And that's kind of the target we're going for. CryEngine actually can scale down pretty well, and we haven't really done much optimization in the game of the engine yet. which we are working on, but you know, you haven't seen it in the Hangar module and stuff. So I would say that if you can run, you know, something like a Crisis 3 or whatever on extreme settings and it looks good, you'll be able to do kind of the same with us.
Awesome. How will random attacks by players in Star Citizen happen?
Well, okay, so you're talking about PvP, and in the case of PvP, there'll be certain areas that it's okay to do PvP, and there'll be certain areas that it won't be okay to do PvP. So if you're in the well-regulated like space around Earth, you know, PvP is only allowed in authorized fashion. So like if there's a bounty on someone's head, for instance, they're a pirate and there's a bounty on the head, well, PvP is authorized on them, so everyone else can go after them. But if you're just a trader, merchant flying around in the safe space lanes, then generally in, you know, the really safe areas, PvP isn't really authorized. And so if you do enact PvP, then you sort of, you know, it has a hit to your reputation, there could be a bounty on your head, and then of course other people can come after you for PvP. Now there'll be other areas that will be, you know, totally open and anything goes, and it'll be PvP, PvE, whatever. And in those areas, obviously it's a lot more risky, but there'll probably be a lot more reward. Like there'll be the ones where the trading runs will, you know, yield the most money. You can get missions that will give you the most money. So this kind of the idea is that if you want to sort of stick to a more PvE experience, you can and still have a lot of fun. But you know, you can sort of, if you want to sort of up your return, you can sort of maybe venture into these riskier waters that may be PvP or may not be PvP. You don't know until you get there. I mean, you could run into a really bad AI or that can kick your ass, or maybe you'll be a player, or maybe you know, you don't know. It's sort of an open setup.
So speaking of players, how many players can we expect in a system at once?
Well, so you mean in one little area? I mean, so it's difficult because we instance on a local basis. So we're planning on having a system that can handle millions of players, but obviously you can't have a million players all on the screen at once. So we break space into instances, which is equivalent, if you ever played Wing Commander or Privateer, is like a little nav area where you drop out in space. And you know, so we're not quite sure how many players we can get into that sort of space. You know, whether it's 30 players or 60 players or 100 players, but that's one of the reasons why we want to have the proper backbone. But the idea is that those instances are sort of dynamically being created and destroyed as you move around. So you can, in the system, you very well could have tens of thousands of people in a system. You just won't ever be able to see more than, you know, our max instance amount in one visual area. But we're always like we're adding and taking people out of these instances, they move along. You know, I think it's just who you would appreciate right next to you, because you could have 10,000 people hanging out in the Sol system, for instance.
Are there going to be European servers, American servers? How is that going to happen in terms of logistics?
Yeah, no, so we're committed to having servers across. I mean, we have like, you know, over half our supporters are from outside the US. So we're definitely committed to European servers. We have North American servers, and we're also looking at doing some servers in Australia to sort of handle the Australasia area.
How many original scores do you have planned for Star Citizen?
Well, I mean, it's a huge world. So it'll be hard for me to give you a number on that. I mean, right now we have a Portuguese composer called Pedro Camacho, who's very talented. He did the music for the 300i commercial, the Hornet commercial, the Aurora commercial. He's also, you know, we've recorded an orchestral session. Well, basically 2 orchestral sessions right now. We did some music for the dogfighting. So that's a whole bunch of sound for us to test out, like the branching music. So it'll be very much like Wing Commander, where the music changed to what was happening in your battle situation. But it'll be hard. I mean, I would imagine there will be hours and hours and hours of music composed for Star Citizen.
So last question.
All right.
How many ships do you plan to have in the game? And currently, what's the biggest ship that you can get?
You know, it's hard. I mean, I think we were originally planning about 25 ships in total, but we keep, you know, but we have more funds, and so now we can do a lot more, and it's actually kind of fun. And ships are basically what everyone wants. Everyone likes they want different kinds of ships, and it's a lot of fun creating ships for the alien races as well as the human races. So it'll be hard to put a finger down on how many ships we'll have in the final game, because first of all, A, we'll be adding to it all the time, and B, it sort of also depends on how the funding's gone. I mean, obviously it's gone really great so far. It would be hard to say exactly how many, but lots, I would guess. A lot more than you got right now. So right now, the biggest ship that a player could own is an Idris Corvette, and we're actually pretty far along in building that, to have that run around in space. The biggest ship, period, is the Bengal carrier, although there is going to be a bigger ship than that for Squadron 42. we're in the process of designing a destroyer, and we have a few other bigger ships too. But probably the destroyer will be the biggest like ship that a player could like purchase or buy with his own money. Some of the bigger ones you may be able to get, but you'd have to sort of capture them in gameplay.
So say you're in a bigger ship like that, and you have your buddies with you, you have a group of people. If, say your engine room gets hit for some reason, do you physically have to leave your command post and go to the engine room and repair it? Or how's that going to play out?
Well, no, that's the idea. So the idea is on the bigger ships, instead of it being sort of single player dogfighting action, it's more about like flying and managing a big ship. And so you have all the different seats on it. So you've got someone that's at the helm, you have someone that's like running weapons, someone that's tasking, say, fighters that have launched off your ship. And the same for like people running to gun turrets or going down like, you know, the engine room is damaged, you got to go and repair it. So the idea is that, you know, you and a group of your friends or players, or even if you had some NPCs, you could like be on the ship trying to, you know, just like you see in a sci-fi movie, you're operating a bigger vehicle and doing all this stuff on it. And that was kind of one of the original goals and dreams of the game, and that's what we're going to deliver. And I think that's going to be a very different experience than people have had before.
It sounds to me like it's never been done before, and it's going to be exciting to
it's going to be good. Yeah, I mean, that's my biggest thing. So the dogfight's cool. The very first version of the dogfight, I'm not sure we're going to have the big multiplayer, like the Constellation is the big ship we'll put in at the beginning in the dogfight, but that won't be there the first launch of the dogfight, so maybe Rev 2, but that's the moment I'm looking forward to, getting into like going to the asteroid field with the Constellation, and like 3 Hornets come around an asteroid, and you're like, all right, get to the turrets and launch them, you know, the Merlin P-52 fighter, and it'll be cool. Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
You're more than welcome.